What's up, guys? This is Kyrim from the Trinity of Lift, and today I bring all of you guys an Evilswarm deck profile. Evilswarm has kind of fallen out of favor as not really an anti-meta deck anymore because it's lost some of its effectiveness. But frankly, I like Evilswarms, firstly because it was a budget deck, so I was able to make this deck for fairly cheap. And another good thing is that since this is an anti-meta based deck, you can run a couple of weird odd cards that really do hurt the meta nowadays. So I just wanted to bring you guys a very fun list of my Evilswarm deck. So let's get right into it. First up for the Evilswarms, we do play 3 Evilswarm Kirkion. He is probably the most explosive card of the deck, really helping you get your rank 4 plays off, either into your Ophion or your Exciton Knight or whatever you might need at any given time. Having the Kirkion at 3 is essential in my opinion, as again, like I said, it's your very explosive card and basically is always an instant rank 4. So yes, 3 Kirkion. Next up, we play 3 Caster. Caster's here obviously to help, again, accelerate our rank 4 plays within the deck, and we have 3 because there are times when Evilswarms might be a little slow because outside, I believe, Caster and Kirkion, and Mandragora also, there isn't really any summoning effects. Like, there's no easy way to summon some of the Evilswarms, so we do have Caster to help speed up our deck, and we have to have 3 because firstly, he is a good card as well as he is searchable, so we need to have that 3. Next up, finally, for the last 3 of Evilswarm, we do play 3 Evilswarm Heliotrope. Primarily, this guy is run at 3. Firstly, because we do run a Rescue Rabbit. So, having the 3 vanilla targets so that our rabbit can be as live as much as possible is always helpful. As well as it's fairly relevant too because it does have a pretty big attack stat at 1950. And there isn't, I don't believe actually there is any normal summonable monster nowadays where you can just summon it and swing over Heliotrope, because Heliotrope, I believe, is the biggest thing right now as just a normal summonable monster. I believe in the current meta. I believe the Cleave Forts go up to 1800. I think the biggest Shadows can make is a Shadow Dragon at 19, and I don't think Burning Abyss has that much relevant normal summons. Maybe it might be a Seer at 16, but I don't know. I'm probably missing something, but frankly, in my opinion, Heliotrope is still very relevant because it can run over a lot of things and just stick for pretty big amounts of damage. Next up, we run 2 Evilswarm Thunderbird. This guy is a fairly good monster in the sense that it can help us avoid effects from our opponent, as well as it can boost itself up to 1950 at times. But the thing is with Thunderbird, I only run it at 2 because it is fairly slow. There is no easy way or quick way to get it out, which is why we only run 2. And the primary reason why Thunderbird is useful is because since it can avoid effects with its own effect by banishing itself, you can constantly have that level 4. So if you have to take a fairly slow turn by just summoning Thunderbird and sitting on it, you can rest assured that your Thunderbird is going to be fairly easily protected because of its own effect. So it can help you get your rank 4 plays next turn. So that's it for the 2 Thunderbird. Next up, for our last Evilswarm monsters, we do run 2 Mandragora. Mandragora is here, frankly, because again, Evilswarms, they are pretty explosive with their rank 4s, but they cannot get a ton of rank 4s on the field, if you know what I'm getting at. So we have the 2 Mandragora for when we probably will go second or whatnot, so it's an easy level 4 monster on board for us to make our rank 4 plays with. So that's it for the Evilswarms. Next up, for the other monsters, we do play 1 Kage Tokage. This is again to help us get our rank 4s on board easier. And since we always will be normal summoning a lot of our monsters with effects of Caster and Kirkion, we do have the Kage Tokage because it can always get triggered pretty easily. Next up, like I said before, we do run the 1 Rescue Rabbit. Self-explanatory really, it gets us an instant rank 4 with 2 Heliotrope. So yes, 1 Rabbit. And then finally, we do have the 1 Dark Arm Dragon. Again, we have enough graveyard manipulation with things like Kirkion and such, where we can run Dark Arm because we can usually consistently get it out because we do have that easy, that easy manipulation of darks in our grave. So yeah, that's it for the monsters. Moving on to the spells, we started off with Triple Upstart Goblin. Since this deck is slow, we want to get to our combo pieces as quickly as possible, so we do have the 3 Upstart Goblin because a 37 card deck, as always, is more consistent than a 40 card deck. Next up, we run 3 MST. Since this is the goal of this deck is to be an anti-meta deck, we want to have the 3 MST main boarded so we can have a better time against that Cleefort matchup. Next up on our list of spells, we do run only 2 Infestation Pandemic. I understand why people like 3, and 3 is a completely justifiable number. However, the reason why I run 2 is primarily because although our Evilswarm Ophion can search it, and it's an entire board Forbidden Lance for your Evilswarms. The reason why I only have 2 is because in order for our Ophions to be live, we need to have a material attached to them. And I'd rather have 2 Ophions with 1 XYZ material each, rather than 1 Ophion with no materials and the other one with 1 material, where if your opponent destroys that 1 Ophion with I'm sorry, not the 1 material, the 2 material Ophion, then you basically won't have any sort of lock. So frankly, what I'm trying to kind of get at, I guess you could say, is I don't just constantly keep searching these things out. I only search them out when I need them, and I always try and ensure that my Ophions do have XYZ materials attached to them at all times. So if anything happens to our Ophion, whether it gets destroyed by battle or whatever, their lock effect will always still be in play, and I don't want to give my opponent an out to that lock effect. So that's why I only run 2, because frankly 2 is enough. I never needed the third one in my opinion, and frankly it's just for that reason, because I'm not going to be searching it out all that often compared to what people might. So yes, I only run 2. Next up, we do run 2 Reinforcements of the Army. This card is our 4th and 5th copy of Caster. Since Caster helps alleviate our slower hands, we want to get to it as fast as possible. So we also do run the 2 Rhoda, so that we can get to our Caster as soon as possible and have a better first turn play than what we might originally have had. Next up, we do run 2 Pot of Duality. Because this deck, sure, you might have to special summon from your extra deck, but the thing is, since all of our Evilswarms will summon each other through another normal summon, we can actually swarm the field with fairly big amounts of damage. And being locked kind of under the pot restriction isn't that bad. So digging for that 1 extra card we might need is never a bad thing. Because after all, if we pot a duality into something like another Pandemic or whatnot, we can safely stick with our normal summoned monsters and not have to worry about anything like a Deep Prison or whatever. So yeah, 2 duality. Next up, this is a personal tech of mine, but I do play 2 Mask Change the second. You probably can guess the reason why I do run this is because it gives the deck access to Masked Hero Dark Law. And frankly, since it is a very anti-meta based deck, we want to have probably the most anti-meta of anti-meta cards right now. So having the access to Dark Law alongside possibly an Ophion is a very powerful board that really, not constricts, but restricts your opponent from the plays that they might be able to do. Next up, for one-ofs, we play the 1 Pot of Dichotomy. Basically, every main board monster is a different type. So we can run the Dichotomy, as most of the times after we've gone off and summoned our Ophions or whatever, we will usually have enough different types of monsters in our graves to have Dichotomy be live. Next up, we run the 1 Forbidden Lance. This is, again, it's kind of like another Pandemic for a single monster, but the thing is, the reason why I run the Lance is because it gives me like a smaller version of my Pandemic, but it also provides that little 800 attack decrease, so at times that is sort of relevant. That way we can sort of also protect our Ophion from battle as well by lancing our opponent's monster. And frankly, I like this one because it's a little bit more flexible in my opinion instead of Pandemic, as like I said before, I want to keep my materials on Ophion. So having another similar card to Pandemic, but isn't Pandemic and doesn't need to be searched, is very helpful in my opinion. Next up, for the last few one-ups, we do play the 1 Book of Moon, because Book is a great card. We play the 1 Raigeki, so we can keep our own board presence and keep trying to limit our opponent in what they can and cannot do. We play the 1 Snatch Steal, because we want to clear our opponent's board as much as can to prevent them from doing any sort of plays again, since this is an anti-meta deck. So yes, the 1 Snatch Steal. And then finally, we play the 1 Dimensional Fissure. Again, we want it to be anti-meta. We want to just screw up all the meta decks right now, and Dimensional Fissure really helps with that, because Shadows cannot fusion from their deck, or I think actually from their deck and their field engrave. I'm not sure about the ruling, but it still hinders Shadows very much because they also don't get their graveyard triggers effects. Same thing with Burning Abyss, they don't get their graveyard effects. And Cleaforts, I do believe that if they're destroyed, rather than going to the extra deck, I do believe that they get banished instead, because I believe the ruling with Pendulums is that instead of going to the grave, they go to the extra deck. But what D-Fisher says is instead of going to the grave, they get banished. So I believe they also get, the Pendulum monsters also get banished as well. So that's it for the spells. Moving on to the traps, we run 1 Infestation Infection. This card is, I guess you could say it's probably our searching card of the deck. If you guys don't know, what it says is once per turn, you can shuffle 1 Evilswarm monster from your hand or face up from your side of the field into the main deck. And then you can add 1 Evilswarm monster from your deck to your hand. So what this essentially does is it turns any Evilswarm that you might have dead or might have that you not want, and be able to switch it out for any other Evilswarm that you still have in the deck. So this card really helps you adapt to any situation, because say you might have something like a Thunderbird in hand, but you really want to swap it out for something like a Kirkion because it's live or whatnot. This card will let you switch out that Thunderbird essentially just straight for another Kirkion, which you can then use to summon an Ophion in the same turn. So this card is your very adaptive trap. And I do only run 1 because, again, we can search it with Ophion, and this is our 3rd target that we can search. So yeah, 1 Infection. Next up, we run the 1 Wiretap. Because we only do run the 2 Pandemic and 1 Lance, we still want to prevent trap cards from activating, so we do have the 1 tap as our, kind of like our, think of it, I like to think of the Wiretap as a sort of 3rd copy of Pandemic, in the sense that it can protect my Evilswarm monsters from back roll. It's just not, it's not Pandemic, so that way I can still maintain the XYZ materials on my Ophion. Next up, we do run the 1 Macrocosmos. Again, because this is, it's the same thing with D-Fisher, guys. We can run it because it doesn't really hurt us as much, and we really want to screw over the meta as much as possible, and Macro does just that. And then for the final main deck, or not monster, but the main deck card, we do run the 1 Bottomless, primarily for the Cleafort matchup when they do Pendulum Summon and we just make them all fall in a hole. So yeah, that's it for the main deck. Moving on to the extra deck. First off, we have 3 Evilswarm Ophion. You have to run 3. He's your big thing that you want to get out as soon as possible so you can start searching out your Pandemics. And if you do have a fairly good hand, you pretty much can spam an Ophion per turn. And you will be going through them fairly quickly. So we have that 3 Ophion just for that. Next up, to protect our Ophion, we do have 2 number 66 Master Key Beetle. This guy, again, is here to protect our Ophion and to make sure Ophion never dies. But we do run 2 because, just in case our opponent finds it out to our Master Key, we always want to have the second so we can ensure ourselves that we do still have that protection for our Ophion so that we can maintain that lock. And again, we can also use this for something like Dark Law. Both Dark Law and Ophion provide the same idea of control in this deck. So having the 2 Master Key to constantly keep protecting our control-y kind of extra deck monsters is very nice. Next up, we do play the 1 Evilswarm Bahamut, so we can steal our opponent's monsters. We have the 1 Thanatos, for when we want to poke for damage and not have to worry about anything like back row or effects. We have the 1 Evilswarm Nightmare. This guy is primarily for things like Cleaforts and whatnot when they Pendulum Summon. As what Nightmare does is that he's like, think of it like a better sort of Book of Moon. Whenever a monster is special summoned, or a monster or monsters, you can detach 1 XYZ material from this card, and then change all those special summon monsters to face down defense position. So, as you guys can see, this is a very control-y kind of card, and it really does slow down your opponent, because once they're flipped face down, they cannot flip face up until the next turn. So it really helps you stall your opponent out for when you need to might possibly buy some time. Next up, since this is again Evilswarm, we do run the 1 Evilswarm Exciton Knight because this is his home archetype. And obviously, nuking the board is never a bad thing, and it always keeps helping swing the duels in your favor. Next up, for just the generic rank 4s, we run the 1 Castel because it's kind of a rank 4 staple at this point. Any deck that has rank 4 access should be running a Castel at this point. We run the 1 Black Ship to help us burn for damage when we need to. We have the 1 Cowboy to poke for game. We have the 1 Ragnazero, primary again for the Cleafort matchup, and to help us kind of dig through our deck whenever we need to. And then finally, for the last two non-XYZs, we do play the two Masked Hero Dark Law. Again, it's like our mini Ophion. Having this guy and an Ophion, or possibly two Dark Law and an Ophion, if you want to go overkill, is ridiculous because you really can just slow down your opponent all the time and just really control the duel to swing it in your favor. So, that is it, guys, for my Evilswarm deck profile. Please let me know what you guys think of the list down in the comment section below. And as always, guys, this is Kyurem from the Trinity of Lift, and I'll see you guys later. Peace.